What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Just Win Baby podcast. And today we're going through episode number 13, talking about Angela Hill taking on MacKenzie Dern. We've got a women's strawweight main event, and the women's strawweight division is on everybody's mind right now. Weili Zhang, Amanda Lemos just got announced for this summer, former opponents here. So a lot at stake. We've got a lot of women's fights on the card, but we've also got a lot of other fights, a lot of action fights. It's not the best card on paper in terms of name value, but boy, oh boy, do we got a lot of fun fights to break down. I certainly think there's some betting value. Already have 7 bets at this point in the week. A lot for me, especially early on in the week. My guy Rich as well, I know, is feeling very confident about this card. So without further ado, we'll bring in the man himself. Rich, how you doing today, brother?
Hey, man. Yeah, back at it again. Great weekend last week. I didn't have many bets, but I had one big bet that cashed. I had Brian Battle and I had Fight Doesn't Go the Distance. So it was nice to get that one done in like 15 seconds or whatever it was. No idea what Green's game plan was there. Still haven't heard what he was thinking. It would be nice to know. But yeah, successful weekend. And going on to this one, I love the card, man. I think it's going to be my most profitable card of the year. I've got a massive bet on Takashi. Those who follow me on Twitter will know this. I've got something like 9 units on it, ITD, very similar to the bet I had on Blanchfield back in February. So I'm pumped for this card, man. Very excited.
I like it. And, I'll tell you something else, man. We don't normally dwell too much on the last week. We normally get right into the action, but just I have, bet a lot of times on these fights, and normally I'm betting big plus odds. So it's hard for me to get a sweep, right? On my bets, I'm normally betting the plus 1,000, plus 500, whatever it is. So last week, we were able to clear the board with a sweep, 4 for 4 on Bet MMA tips. Lisboa inside the distance. We talked about it all week. I talked about it before the show. I tweeted about it several times. Lisboa ITD ends up coming through plus 255. Had half a unit with my guy Rich there on Brian Battle not to go to decision. Took 0.1 unit on Brian Battle by KO, added before the fight in the Lab VIP as well, because I thought the number was completely busted. Gabe Green, 2 knockout losses in the first round, make that 3 knockout losses in the first round. And so we were done, with a profitable night through the first 2 fights. Like you mentioned, Rich, nothing better than sitting there like, wow, I can't lose today. And the fight, we're only 2 fights into the card. So value top to bottom is the point. And why do we always start with the bottom of the card? Because there's value to be had at every point. So I think that starting with this card this week, man, we got a good card to break down. We've got a welterweight fight kicking us off between Takashi Sato and Themba Gorimbo. And I got to admit a little bit of personal biases here. I felt bad for Themba Gorimbo. He talked a big game coming into his first fight. Thought he was fighting beautifully. I thought he was doing a great job. He was a plus 270 underdog, ended up getting to some good positions. And how many times have we seen people with UFC jitters come out there and make some critical errors, cost himself the fight? I felt like AJ Fletcher needed to get on top to win there. I thought Themba surprised him with his own offensive grappling, was able to get on top. And AJ Fletcher's got a weird body. AJ the Ghost Fletcher, he's kind of got that short, stocky build. Difficult guy to get a hold of, difficult guy to submit, certainly. He's more of a jiu-jitsu player, and a swing and bang striker on the feet. He's not the most technical guy in the world standing, but I think that overall he's a really explosive guy. He was able to match some different kinds of physical gifts, and Themba was able to get overwhelmed there. Takashi Sato, primary striker on the feet. His 2 wins in the UFC, to me, they haven't really told me much. He beat Ben Saunders. I made the joke earlier, with all due respect, I felt like Ben Saunders has been washed since I started fighting, or since I started watching MMA, right? Like the guy's he's been around a long time, but maybe not the most physical, maybe not the most athletic guy, more of a jiu-jitsu player. So he knocked out him, and he knocked out maybe the chinniest guy in the UFC. Certainly got to be up there, right up there with the best of them, Jason Witt. So that doesn't tell me a ton about Takashi Sato. Otherwise, I'm seeing him get hurt in most of his fights. I'm seeing him get dropped often in the UFC. I'm seeing him get dominated completely. I felt like he fought Gunnar Nelson to try and make it to the scorecards. That's not what the UFC likes to see as well. I hate to tell you, they want to see you take the risk like Jared Gordon to get back to your feet so Grant Dawson can submit you in round 3. It's like they want to see action fights where people are trying to win. And I felt like he wasn't trying to win that fight at all. I felt like he was like, okay, I lost this fight. There's no way I could beat this guy. Let me hold on to this and just not get submitted the rest of the fight. So I haven't liked what I've seen from Sato is the bottom line. I feel like Themba Gorimbo, we saw him make massive improvements from his regional tape to his UFC performance. I feel like we can see, another improvement here. He's training at MMA Masters, primary training partner of Colby Covington. So I know that me and you don't believe one training camp changes your life and everything, but he's got the physical intangible advantages here. I feel like he's probably the more dangerous fighter on the ground. I feel like on the feet, it's an honest fight where he's got a lot of power and he's swanging and banging. So I like Themba here as the side. And I think that, odds makers agreed. They opened this minus 165. Now we're looking at a minus 110 price. I had to take a little bit of advantage there. So I like the Themba side. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, I can't lie, to be honest. I made my bets early, like I do every week. I put some bets out, I think, on Sunday or Monday. I put 3 moneyline bets out, and Sato was one of them. I put 1 unit on him. And then as we go through the week and I start chatting to yourself and, you was bigging up Gorimbo, I've changed my stance. You made some good points. I was impressed by the Gunnar fight, being able to hold on and not getting submitted by Gunnar. But it's a completely different fight, man. Gunnar's subs are different. He was position over submission, where I feel like Gorimbo, he's more explosive, athletic, a bit more willing to go for these submissions. And he's got it all, man. Guillotines, arm bars, rear nakeds. And one of the reasons I picked Sato was I figured Gorimbo was going to come out round 1, get his takedown, hold him for a round, not get the sub because Gunnar couldn't. And then in round 2 or 3, Sato was going to KO. That was my original thought. But yeah, I was putting too much stock into Sato being able to survive, man. And I'm fully with you now. I like the Gorimbo side. The fact that he got subbed by Bilal tells you everything. Who does Bilal finish? Hardly anyone. I know he got Brady, but he needed 80 strikes to do it. He's never subbing anyone. He's got 1 sub on his record, and that was against Sato. So that tells you everything you need to know. Sato is very prone to submissions. I think Gorimbo, like I said, gets his takedown in round 1, and it's a wrap. I can see a submission very early, man.
I like where your head's at. Also, people forget that Gunnar Nelson was coming off a long layoff going into that fight. He kind of took his time, wanted to see where his wind was at, and I felt like we just saw him going very aggressively for his choke series. He was not interested in the ground and pound as much, whereas Gunnar Nelson of the past used to just try and get on top of people, bloody them up, force them to give up the sub. So I felt like we saw a little bit of, evolution from Gunnar. Use the MMA meta, take the back control and ride it to an easy decision win. So overall, that's a fight that I think is going to be fun. I think the under 2.5 is interesting as well. It's pretty short number here for a welterweight fight where both guys tend to be finishers, tend to be kill or be killed. So I think that could be an interesting look as well. Appreciate the kind words, everybody. Now we've got a quick dono here from Matt R as well. Liam, you look massive in that Jits video. Appreciate you, brother. I am merely a 155 pounder. Don't cut that much weight to get there either, just a couple pounds. So I appreciate it, my man, but just a lifetime spent wrestling and grappling.
The camera adds 10 pounds, right?
Yeah, I like to think so. Next up, man, we got Victoria Leonardo taking on Natalia Silva, women's flyweight, going to be featured in our second bout of the evening. And, Victoria Leonardo, obviously the biggest underdog on the card by, a significant degree here. She's over plus 600, plus 700 on 7 markets. So some markets. So yeah, for me, pretty one-way traffic here, right? I think they opened this Silva minus 500. She's swelled out to minus 1,000, minus 900, minus 800. So you're really not seeing a good price, a playable money line price on Silva. If you want to get involved, probably have to look at something like a totals market here and under 2.5 at minus 130, minus 140. Feels like a trap to me. Leonardo is one of these girls that does take a lot of damage though. And we've seen, even girls that are primarily jiu-jitsu finishers like Melissa Gatto able to land big impactful kicks, use some supplementation, whatever you want to call it, to just overwhelm her with some power. And I feel like she's always had a problem blocking kicks on both forearms and injuring herself that way. That's a little bit suspect. Don't know that she knows how to deal with kicks very well. So I think Silva is a dangerous kicker. I think the UFC is well aware of that. They'd like to get this girl a nice highlight reel going. They feel like they found something here. So that's what it feels like to me. Setup fight. But it's women's MMA, banana peel territory at -1,000. It just doesn't feel necessary to play this for me. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, definitely. The odds are wild, man. Like you say, -1,000 for women's MMA, but she's going to get it done. I bet her in her debut. I think she's the truth, man. This Natalia Silva. I think she's going to sub her by armbar from bottom. I think Leonardo's going to take her down and get her arm ripped off. That's what I think is going to happen in the fight. I like the line too. The square. The books are a bit square on this. They've got the KO at like -140. I guess. Sorry, +140. I guess because she finished by KO in her last fight. But I think she's primarily a submission artist, Natalia. And yeah, I think she's going to rip her arm off, man. Armbar, round 1 or 2.
Absolutely. Appreciate this comment as well from Nelsanity. Says, smash the like, guys. 2 of the best cappers in the game, giving out top tier breakdowns on the card. Appreciate the kind words, but guys, it does mean a lot. 64 people watching live. So go ahead and drop a like on the video. Get subscribed to the channel if you're not already, because we've got to talk about chasing the damn dream. And guys, if you've watched this channel for a while, I'm a Chase super fan. I like the guy. He's a nice guy. He seems like a cool guy. He works really hard, came into the game extremely young. And what have we found out about him? He's tough as hell, right? He gets dropped. So many guys quit in that moment, right? Cover up, see you later. He stands back up, gets dropped again, stands back up, gets dropped again. Okay, he doesn't have the best stand-up in the world. Steve Garcia hits like a truck. A little bit of a tweener in terms of weight classes, been from 55 to 35. Hard to get a read on the guy. He's a big fellow. He likes to cut weight, be a little bit of a weight bully, throws big punches. So obviously that didn't go his way, but he was a -300 favorite there. Everybody prior to the fight agreed this is a Chase Hooper smash spot. Chase Hooper is going to destroy this guy. Chase Hooper's levels above him. And now he's a bum. Now he sucks. Now he's he's chinny. Now he's never struck before. It's like, have you guys watched the fights? Like he's never been the best striker, but he's found ways to win. He's a crafty guy. He's got good submissions. He's got good cardio. He's got good pace. And I thought the thing that stood out about him, rest in peace, Felipe Colares, obviously. Terrible story there. But when you watch that fight back, it went according to plan. What I said was going to happen. I said, when he goes against other guys that are good on the ground, he tends to get to good positions because he's crafty, because he's weird, holds their wrist behind their back, pops out somewhere, and then he starts throwing ground and pound. And especially regionally, that's all he was focused on. He would obviously look for his subs, but when he would get top position, he would just beat up on people relentlessly because he's got good pace and he's got good positions. I feel like that's what he had gotten away from. I feel like that's what we might see him get back towards in these fights. And when he's on top, man, he's a menace. He's just a pace machine, a grab wrist and punch you in the face. So I do like the Chase Hooper side here. I think at plus money, it's very interesting. This open to pick 'em fight, a Chase slightly favored to win. It's the market that's come in on the Fiore side. And I understand why to a slight degree. He's got the credentials on paper, the black belt. He went with Rebecca. But as, I'm sure you're going to break down, the cardio dynamics there were so different, where Rebecca is just parking the truck on top. He's heavy. He's a guy that's got good top control. That's not Chase Hooper, in the same way. He's much more flowy. He's much more of a guy that can just go all day moving around. He's one of those guys that's a pain in the ass to roll with in the room because he's really flexible and he's always funky and he's doing something crazy and popping out on your back. So I just feel like they're a completely different style of grappler, and I like the Chase Hooper side. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, I don't respect anyone who's putting money on Fiore here because I think it's square as fuck. I think it's easy to look at Hooper's last fight and say, he's washed. He's not what we thought. He's going to get knocked out. He's too small. He gets touched up in every fight. But every fight's different, man. And styles make fights. I don't like this Fiore guy. I didn't like his debut against Rebecca. I know it was on short notice, and we have to give him a bit of credit for surviving that fight. But that's all he did, man. He survived. In round 2 and 3, once Rebecca emptied the tank and had nothing left, he was content to just lay on Fiore. What did Fiore have? Nothing, no get-ups. He's supposed to be this great submission artist. No arm bars, no triangles. He wasn't trying for anything, man. So then I look at his record. He's got a lot of round 1 finishes, which I don't like. I like to see people going to decisions on the regionals, facing a bit of adversity, showing that they've got a bit of heart and they can come back. I don't want to see someone crushing cans like Jay Ellis in 2 fights. That tells me nothing. You're not growing as a fighter. So I think he's trash. I think Hooper wins. I think cardio is going to be a big factor in this fight, which many people aren't talking about. Hooper's a motherfucker, man. Like, he's a squirmy little kid. He's got cardio for days. He might not have the stand-up, but he's got heart. He's got, pace, aggression. And he takes people into deep waters like he did with Colares. And he drowns people, man. I think if anyone's knocking anyone out in this fight, it's going to be Hooper via ground and pound, late round 2, round 3, or getting a submission. So I like Hooper in the distance. I don't think Fiore's for real. I think it's set up by the UFC as well. They're giving him someone who's not a hitter now. Garcia cuts a tremendous amount of weight to make the weight class. So that was just a bad matchup for Hooper. I think the UFC have learned from that. He's just signed a new contract with the UFC, most recently, a new 4-fight deal. And he's doing work for the UFC on Fight Pass. So this is just a setup, man, and a no-brainer to me. But, we've all got our own opinions. So go bet Fiore if you like it.
Yep, I think a lot of people are going to fade his stand-up, but I do think that, it's not about having power when you have ground and pound. It's about having position. If somebody can't get out of the position, you win. It's that simple. The crucifix works that way as well. How many people get up from a crucifix? They look like they were undamaged. They're like, what the hell? They get beat on with the forearm a little bit. You'd rather take those than a lot of clean punches to the face, right? But it's the same stoppage nonetheless. So I just think that, yeah.
And let me just address the comments from Sean. Like, no hate to you, Sean, but it's square to say that, man. Like, Rebecca would smoke Hooper. Maybe not. Who cares? That's not the fight we've got. The fight we've got is Hooper versus Fiore, and every fight is different. Styles make fights. Hooper doesn't need power as well. Like, he doesn't need it. It's pressure. It's putting it on Fiore, who's low volume on the feet. Even when he had Rebecca hurt in the second round by a fluke punch, he didn't follow up on it. He's a jiu-jitsu guy. Hooper's a jiu-jitsu guy. I can see this going to the ground, scrambles, and I can see Fiore getting tired, man.
And think about the difference between like Movsar Evloev and Diego Lopes, right? It's all the time working from the back, trying to throw up subs, trying to throw up elbows, everything. We didn't see that same level of resistance, in my opinion. In that Rebecca fight, it looked a lot more passive. Granted, no full training camp there. So maybe with a full training camp, we see a better performance. But yeah, I think until further notice, I think Chase Hooper is just a clearly more proven guy. So let's see how it plays out. Should be a fun
Another
fight.
Big factor as well is, from what I see from Fiore, he wants things to be pretty in there. He wants to take his time, be methodical and stuff. And when I see him on top of people on the regionals, he's position over submission, taking his time, trying to secure the position, then get the submission. Hooper isn't going to allow that, man. He's chaotic in there. He creates scrambles. He makes you fight for positions. He's not just going to lay on his back and let you fucking dominate him like you've done on the regional scene. Fiore's in for a fight here, man. So I think plus money is the side to be on.
Yeah, the other thing to mention here, Chase Hooper is moving up to 155 pounds. He's still going to have the height and reach advantage here in his lightweight debut in the UFC. He's a guy that was cutting a lot of weight to 145 as well, and that could cause you to have worse durability. I feel like for Chase, maybe part of his path to putting on muscle and stuff is not cutting the weight, at a time when his body's developing and growing. He's still a young guy. So I feel like overall for Chase Hooper's development, it's the right move to go to 155. He's got a big frame. And I feel like overall that's going to continue to benefit his cardio dynamic as well as his durability. So should be a good fight here, but I like the Hooper side, and I think this is a good get back spot for our guy, Chase the Dream Hooper. He's cashed some big tickets for me before, so always going to have a soft spot in my heart for the guy. Next up, we got Ilir, as John Anik would call him, the backyard shed Latifi, taking on Rodrigo Nascimento. And, speaking of complete 180s, Rich, this is a fight where I've kind of done a complete 180. My original thought here was Latifi is a live underdog, and it's not like I'm going to rush to the window and bet Rodrigo Nascimento. I'm certainly not laying the price with him because my notes have always been disfavorable of the guy. I don't trust him on the feet. I don't trust him on the ground. I feel like he's a little bit suspect in his decision-making. I don't like his response to being hit. So all of those things being said, he's 10 years younger. I do a thing every week where I talk about the anthropomorphic advantages. He's the one checking every box this week: the height, the reach, the age. So it's like he's just way younger, older, bigger, heavier, older, like longer, heavier. he's got a lot going for him in that regard. I do think skill for skill, Latifi's still a more skilled fighter than he is, but Latifi, what is he really going to offer at this point? Does he want to be there? Does he give a shit about winning this fight? What does his pay look like? Like, is it a huge difference, win or loss here? Probably, but is he going to throw a lot of punches to win? No, he's going to try and wrestle, get on top. So yeah, I don't really trust either side in this fight. So for me, it feels kind of like a pass. I do think Rodrigo Nascimento is bad. I hope he wins here by finish, so I can fade him again in the future. But yeah, that's kind of how I feel about this. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree with you to an extent. I was originally going to pass on this fight until I realized that this is Latifi's retirement fight. I'm 100% sure he's coming into this bout just to show up, just to put his gloves in the middle of the cage and to get one final paycheck, man. I don't think he's going to come with anything. I don't think he's been training, if at all. I agree, Nascio's shit himself, man. He's got tons of problems. But I literally think Latifi won't do anything. His last performances have been alarming, especially the Tanner Boza one, the one where he got clipped and Tanner was wailing on him. I just think he didn't offer much in there. He was just trying to get his takedowns on the feet. He didn't really want to throw anything. And he was just fortunate that Tanner's got like the worst takedown defense ever. So he was able to do a couple of things in that one. But Nascimento's too big. He's got an excellent ground game. I think Nascimento by sub is tremendous value. It's over plus 500, which is crazy. Nascimento sub round 1 is 1,200. Nascimento sub round 2 is 1,800. So I don't mind sprinkles on them, man. I think that's a good look. I literally think, I hate to say the word luck, but I can't see Nascimento losing this one purely because Latifi isn't showing up for anything, man. I promise you, he's just showing up to get a paycheck and retire. That's my take anyway. We'll see what happens.
Yeah, and it seems like the books are kind of leaning the same way because Nascimento KO is like nerfed down completely. And the only way that we've seen Nascimento really like go ahead on strikes is like somebody just curling up and not wanting to be there. Very plausible outcome here. So I would think, Nascimento ITD, I don't know what that price is going to be.
Plus 130, it's disgusting.
Oh, that's absolutely horrific. Yep, that's disgusting. So take a long shot or maybe just let this one go because it's a pretty gross fight. But I do think Nascimento reluctantly is the side, and hopefully we get a great spot to fade him next time against an unknown heavyweight, a Parker Porter, if you will. Next up, Orion Cosce taking on Gilbert Urbina. Everybody seems to feel compelled to bet this fight this week. I certainly am not, right? The reason being, initially I thought, man, Gilbert Urbina plus one, I forget what I sent it at originally. I always start sending ideas in the Discord first, and then like as the week goes on, I do my research, I start peeling things down and start placing bets. And by the time I look back at this, it's like plus 102 is the best line available. No, thank you. I mean, that's just not a great price. Urbina's got a lot of question marks here. So should that push the line closer to 50-50? Absolutely. Yeah, it shouldn't be plus 195, but should it be, any further than minus 110? I don't think so. I think a pick'em here is fair. Cosce has said some really alarming things in interviews about his arms going numb in the fights, about him having difficulty getting through them. His cardio hasn't looked great. It's flagged certainly in some of his fights. But Gilbert Urbina, you could say the same thing about him. You could question his durability a little bit. Tresean Gore has proven to have some power in his hands, but he's not putting out everybody with one shot. Dropped him with the jab there, if my memory serves, and put him out. So I think that this is a fight where Urbina could come in and look like the value side in hindsight because Cosce's been dealing with injuries. As far as I know, he's not training with his primary camp here. He's kind of like doing his own thing, training on his own. All that sounds horrible to me. But also, Urbina has just given up really bad positions in the grappling quickly before as well. Haven't liked what I saw from him in some of the exchanges. But from a narrative standpoint, my original read on Urbina here was they put a bunch of money into this guy. He's on Ultimate Fighter. His family's been around the UFC. Like, there's just like more reasons to do this guy a favor. And the Cosce brothers stink, in my opinion. So gut level, I just think Urbina is going to win this fight because Cosce stinks. However, Cosce has shown he can win UFC fights. He can gut it out. He's a pretty tough guy, despite the fact that he's not that great. So I think overall, it's just, likely a pass situation. But I think people who took the plus money, especially the big plus money on the Urbina side, I think that makes plenty of sense. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, I think if you got plus 170 on Urbina, that's a good look, man. But like you said at the beginning, people feel compelled to bet on this fight. And in my opinion, it's exactly like the Edmen and Hernandez fight later on the card. People feel compelled to bet it when they don't have an edge or an angle and they're guessing, like, do you think Edmen's got it? Do you think this is going to happen? Like, just stay away, man. But if you got to bet this fight, I guess Urbina submission 300, Urbina submission round 1 800 is a good look, because I do think him dropping to 170, he's a huge guy, he's like 6'1", 6'2", something like that. I do think him dropping down in weight, he is going to have major success in round 1, like he did against Brian Battle. The only difference is I don't think Cosce has got the heart that Battle has to withstand that and then come back in round 2 and sub Urbina like Battle did. So I think if Urbina has his way of him in round 1, it could be a wrap in round 1, man. He's too big, too strong. He likes to initiate the grappling straight away. That's the way I see Urbina. Looks for the clinch, looks for the takedown, looks for the submissions. So I don't mind plus 800 on a submission round 1 for Urbina. If he doesn't get it, look to live bet it, man. Because you can say what you want about Cosce, but he has got, a bit of heart about him. You see him in fights grinding, pushing the wrestling himself. But most likely Urbina is probably going to sub him in round 1, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think the sub, the TKO, both going to be live here. If you can't have full use of your faculties in a cage fight against somebody who's already a bit longer naturally than you, who's probably a better striker on paper, it's just fundamentally a really tough matchup. So, yeah, I think Urbina at the big plus number is very enticing, but like you mentioned, maybe a lot of the value's been sucked out of this one. So probably best to just leave it alone at this point or look for some of those prop plays on the Urbina side. But again, these are pretty low-level fighters, so prepare to be amazed with just how greasy and disgusting this fight gets. Next up, Karolina Kowalkiewicz taking on Vanessa Demopolous, and this is a fight that I am excited about. My first instinctual look here was actually the under. Just because Vanessa Demopolous kind of wades into the fire. She likes to swing big in round 1. Both of these women have been knocked down in the first round in the UFC, which is rare for WMMA. And on top of that, we've seen certainly on the Vanessa side, she's recorded a knockdown in her last fight. She's been improving with the hands. She's now training Factory X Muay Thai. So probably going to be working primarily on her striking in this camp. That's what she's been talking about. And she's been, already a pretty dynamic kicker. She's got powerful punches. She's not very long, but she does commit to her shots and engage. She's got a 37-year-old opponent in front of her who's been through a lot of wars, who's been in a lot of really tough fights, who's on the, other end of her career, let's say, not the title contention end of her career. She's on the gatekeeping end of her career. She's fought pretty soft opposition, I would argue, in her last 2 fights. And now she's, taking that moderate step up to a gatekeeper status here, where Vanessa Demopolous been getting some wins. Yeah, a little bit by the skin of her teeth, but she's also been putting together new skills, new wrinkles to her game, fighting better on the feet, finding takedowns in these fights, which she wasn't always doing. Silvana Gomez-Juarez ended up getting submitted because she knocked her down. So for me, I feel like there's a couple paths to the ground in this fight, either girl via knockdown. I feel like there's a couple paths to the ground with either girl going for takedowns. And I just think Vanessa's dangerous on the ground with her submissions. I think that she's dangerous with her power against somebody who's a little bit older and may check out if she gets hit really hard in this fight. I haven't liked her reactions in recent bouts to getting hit cleanly. So yeah, I like the Vanessa side, and I think she's probably going to win inside the distance. What do you think?
Yeah, I like the Vanessa side. I don't like what I'm seeing lately from Karolina. All through her career, I remember her debut. She's known as a striker. She never went for takedowns. She just defended them. And then in her last 2 bouts, that's how she's been winning, man. She got Herrig out of there by a submission. And then in her last fight against Juarez, it was 1-1 going into the third, and she needed grappling and takedowns to win the fight. So what's she going to do here? She can't take Vanessa down because that's Vanessa's world. So she's got to stand. And like Rogan commented and like Daniel Cormier were commenting on the last fight of Karolina, they didn't like what they were seeing, man. She was stiffing up when she was getting hit. They attributed it to all the wars that she's been having back in the day with like Grasso and Jan Zonen. So I like the Vanessa side. I think Vanessa could even knock her out at like plus 1,000. She swings big bombs, man. If she connects with one of them, it could be lights out. I like the move to Factory X. Some people were saying that it's not good that she's left fight ready because they're more of a, strategy, let's game plan camp, where Mark Montoya's, more Muay Thai and let's do the stand up. But yeah, I like that move for her, man. I do think Montoya's camps are good, and I do think they game plan as well. So I love the move. It's good to try different styles. If you're primarily a grappler, why not go to a camp that's primarily stand up and work on the part of your game that isn't, polished up yet? So I like Vanessa. She's still a dog. I don't mind that. And yeah, she's the side, man. Karolina's like 37. She's always talking about retirement. It's time to do that. Go have your baby you keep talking about, and see you later.
You're brutal. We wish you well in all your future endeavors from Olympics Fights Promotions. No, I'm playing. But overall here, I got to say Vanessa Demopolous also, Cleveland, Ohio in the building. She's been all over the country, but Cleveland, Ohio, born and raised. So never forget Cleveland tough, baby. Vanessa Demopolous. That's why she swings them hammers in the pocket. She ain't afraid of a fight. I learned in Ohio. People don't talk about fighting like they do in New York. They just start fighting. So shout out to the great state of Ohio. But next up, we've got Maheshate versus Vyacheslav Borschev. And as you guys guessed, neither one of them is from Ohio. This is a fun fight, man. I'm excited. Two lightweights here. And both these guys have put on a lot of fun fights. When they're not in fun fights, why is it? It's because they're getting taken down relentlessly. We saw in the last fight, pretty good job getting back up to the feet, trying to work through it. But the relentless pace of Rafa Garcia was able to overcome Maheshate. But he's a very physically imposing guy for the division. Long, tall, hits very hard, got a lot of power. And we really don't know very much about his offensive wrestling and grappling. We do see one regional win via triangle choke. So I felt like that was an interesting look. Obviously wasn't able to find that footage readily, but I feel like this is a guy who has upside in every position. He's being guided along, right? He's at Killcliff MMA. He's training alongside Shahbazyan Nurdenbeki, who's a guy who's constantly leveraging wrestling and grappling. So I'm sure he's facing those threats in the room and potentially could work it in offensively. I think the idea that he can't get takedowns here is so farcical. And people are saying that because, Maheshate has not attempted a takedown yet in the UFC. Yeah, so freaking what? This guy's been taken down 2 or more times in every UFC fight so far. People that didn't want to take him down necessarily, like Davis, early on, were just like, oh, I'm going to take the free takedowns. And then he took them, and then he easily got them over and over and over. So obviously Mike Davis, another big, strong guy. Is he the world's best wrestler and grappler? No, he's good at those things. He's gotten submitted by Gilbert Burns with ease, right? But when you see him at his best, he's very dominant, physically imposing. I feel like the same thing can be said for Maheshate. And I feel like Vyacheslav Borschev has had terrible grappling throughout his career. It's improved, and he showed dog and toughness. I told you in the Kenley St. Louis fight, I thought he was impressive in how tough he was. However, he was saved by the bell. He's locked in a deep head and arm choke at the end of that round. He was in a rear naked choke previously. So he fights out of stuff. He's really trying to stay in there. He wants to win. He's a dog in that way. But I think skill for skill, technique for technique, he's going to be a step behind here if this goes to the ground. And I also think that on the feet, this is a fight where both guys have big explosive power. Everybody's talking about Borschev being more technical, and I think that's fair. He's got good body punching, but I think that Maheshate probably a little bit more durable, probably a little bit more natural power as well. And we've seen Borschev hurt by Kenley St. Louis. We've seen him hurt by Dakota Bush. We've seen him hurt by almost every opponent he's fought that tried to stand with him on the feet. So he puts himself at risk constantly to throw his big shots. And I feel like Maheshate is the guy that can make you pay for that, as he did Steve Garcia. So, yeah, I like Maheshate here. What do you think?
Yeah, I like him too. We spoke about it a bit. I didn't subscribe to the submission stuff you was talking about, but like we said at the end of it all, man, it's a fight. Anything could happen. So maybe, but I can't believe people are betting Slava here, man. I don't get it at all. Why they'd be betting him, man, based on the tape. So he fights in Dana White's Contender Series. He fights Duncan. Duncan's just an idiot. He just stalks him and gets countered. That's not how you fight someone with the stand-up of Slava.
Then he did the same thing against Charlie the Cannibal, too, before getting he face-planted Charlie the Cannibal, which was impressive. But he did the exact same game plan up to that point, which was get dropped 3 times in the opening 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, I'm not discrediting Slava's skills. He is good at stand-up. He is technical. I agree to that. All I'm saying is the people he's been fighting thus far have played into his game plan. That Kennedy St. Louis guy, whatever his name is, he was getting beat up for like 4.5 minutes of round one before he found that counter right, because he was just marching forward in the distance range and he was being used as a punch bag. Duncan did the same. Bush gassed and got hit with the liver shot and he was out. Maheshate doesn't do that, man. He darts in and out. He's got lateral movement, and that's going to be the difference in this fight. The footwork. I don't think Slava's going to be able to find him. I've seen China do that for 3 rounds straight, man. He'll bounce in and out. He'll do his lateral movement. So yeah, he ain't finding him, in my opinion. He's too big as well. I think he's going to come in overweight. I can see that happening. I hope he does. I need like 2 pounds or something, nothing crazy. And I think he's going to counter right him like St. Louis did, and KO round 1, maybe KO round 2 to be safe. But this is an easy one for me.
I really hope that for the culture, he drops him and Slava, like he always does, tries to get back up to his feet, tries to tough it out, and my man just puts that long arm around the neck, rear naked choke, and it's all over. That would be beautiful because, and just to your point, Rich, you mentioned my kind of sub angle here. I just thought it was a little bit crazy for the submission by either fighter to be priced over 10-1. And I could explain it from, many perspectives, but I'll just pick one to make it very simple for people, because this is ultimately a theoretical bet, right? And everybody thinks going in, it has to end by knockout, right? Because both guys primarily like to go out there and strike. Neither guy has attempted a submission yet in the UFC. However, when you see guys giving up submission attempts the other way, like Slava has done regionally and in the UFC, when you see both guys having fights where they've given up 5 or more takedowns, you have to ask yourself, could this fight end up on the ground, especially if somebody gets hurt on the feet? Yes, of course. Of course it could. And if it does, and somebody locks up a sub, 10-1 is going to look really stupid, because I'll tell you one other thing. When you look at lightweight fights overall, about 20% of them end by submission. So yes, you can consider, yes, some guys are jiu-jitsu, whatever. But then you look at in the UFC's small octagon, just UFC, small octagon, 54 fight sample, 18 have ended by sub. That's 33%. You're telling me that over 10-1 for something that happens 33% of the time? I'll let you guys do the mathematics on that, but I'll take that bet every time. So over 10-1 on the fight to end by sub, I think, is just a ridiculous misprice here. Next up, we've got Michael Johnson taking on Carlos Diego Ferreira, and there will be no 10-1 on fight ends by sub in a Michael Johnson fight, because that's where he's been liable his whole career to make big mistakes. He was fighting beautifully against Thiago Moises, putting hands on him, beating him up. Could have been a 10-8 round there. Comes out in the second round, and I think it might be the fastest round 2 sub of all time. He just sits back to an ankle lock and the fight's over. So it's not like Michael Johnson is foolproof here. But I do think that he represents somewhat of a live underdog. If he can prevent ground exchanges in this fight, I think he's going to look, like the hindsight favorite. When you look at how Carlos Diego Ferreira fights, he likes to throw some kicks. He likes to get inside. He's getting a lot older. And I felt like we've seen that in his last few fights. Want to talk briefly about a fight where I got robbed to bits. Mateusz Gamrot. I had the sub round 2 at plus 2,500, and he has the guy locked in a rear naked choke. He looks at the referee and he goes, "My ribs," and they call it a TKO. Brutal, dude. Brutal. Gamrot was about to sub him. And so for me, I just can't trust CDF here as a favorite. It's not to say that he can't win this fight. I think if it goes to the grappling, he's going to win the fight probably quickly. But the thing is, on the feet, he's always been susceptible to flash knockdowns, flash knockouts. And I truly believe Michael Johnson to this day carries huge power in his left hand. He's done a much better job fighting with composure as he's gotten older, as he's gotten more mature. So I think that both of these guys are live to win by knockout, with the significant edge going to Michael Johnson for size. And I think that overall, the clear grappling edge is with Ferreira. So maybe if you want to make him a minus 120 favorite here, I would understand that. But I feel like both these guys are on the pasture side of their career. But I feel like Michael Johnson's game translates a little bit better as he gets older. We've seen several times now Carlos Diego Ferreira out-grappled in the UFC. So I know that he is a great grappler and he's a much better grappler than Johnson, but he's not a foolproof wrestler, and Johnson is a good wrestler. So he can normally prevent exchanges. I feel like it's going to be Carlos Diego Ferreira by heel hook, by some crazy inversion. He's going to do something wild, I feel like, in order to pull off a sub here, or he's going to be in a very tough fight on the feet. What do you think, Rich?
I think fight doesn't go the distance is an excellent bet. Yeah, I think that this is a bit like Musasi last week, who I bet, man. I think this is a case of where people have got a bit of like nostalgia about who a fighter once was. I don't think we're going to see the same Diego that was scrapping in there with Gillespie, having a war. I think too many injuries. He's 38 now. He's got his own gym that he's running. I think, again, this is just a paycheck situation, man. It wouldn't surprise me if he's coming in injured. Johnson's always had fast hands, man. He's always live for a knockout. He's got wrestling to defend any takedowns that Carlos might try and implement. But Johnson's had fucking 3 fights in the whole time that Diego's been off, man. Doing whatever, recovering from injuries, teaching fucking jiu-jitsu classes. So yeah, I think that people need to realize this is a 2023 now, man. This isn't the Diego of old, and you need to start, betting accordingly. So I'm on the Johnson side. I think he KOs him. And unfortunately, I don't think we see the old Diego in there, hitting the subs, trying the takedowns and whatnot. It's just a different time, man.
Yeah, and you got to think too, Thiago Moises, very young guy, capable of coming back from a beating. Is Carlos Diego Ferreira going to take a beating and come back in this fight? That does seem implausible to me. And Michael Johnson normally starts hot. He's knocked guys out in the first round, but he's also done a good job of enforcing his will, keeping guys off of him early. He normally makes mistakes in extended fights where he's forced to continue to think about it. I feel like he could shut the lights off in, round 1. I felt like Matt Brown last week was live to do it to Court McGee. When you have 2 age contemporaries and one of them is a knockout hitter, those are the ones that kind of set up sometimes for somebody to have slow reaction time and maybe less durability than young guys, less recoverability, certainly. So that's something that I think, in hindsight, I'm looking at here as an angle for Michael Johnson. 21-18, if he's chalk, you can't bet him. But plus money side, I think there's some reason to consider Michael Johnson this week. Next up, we've got Andre Fialho and Joaquin Buckley. And, man, this is maybe my least favorite fight to target from a sides perspective, because you've got some unknowns in both cases, right? I think that Buckley makes sense as the side here because, he's the guy coming down in weight. Fialho's never done anything impressive in the UFC. He's gone out there, mostly been a punching bag, mostly gassed out in his fights. He throws some good punches. He's got some decent power, but he's really not shown that huge progression in his game, doesn't normally show multiple paths to victory. And so that's, for me, some of the big problems here with backing him. But on the other side, Buckley cutting down to 170. He's got that big barrel chest, what did I describe it as? A box. He's got a box for a chest. And I feel like it's going to be very hard for him to make this weight. But if he's done the lifestyle commitment, everything like that, if we see it, no problem at the weigh-ins, that's going to maybe inspire some confidence for me, because I do think Fialho is pretty consistent to gas out as the fight goes on. Buckley normally can continue to push that pace. I would be more surprised if Fialho implemented takedowns than if Buckley implemented takedowns. So I feel like this is a fight where Buckley is probably going to end up getting to favorable positions. I feel like people don't realize how much marketing value that knockout has for the UFC. It's in every promotional video. It's like probably their most viewed social media hit of all time. So I just think that they're trying to give him a fight that he could win in a new division where he could be more competitive because he's good for marketing. And I think that Fialho overall is just a very average fighter that could go be meandering in any other promotion as well. So yeah, I just I don't rate the Fialho side here. What do you think, Rich?
Yeah, no major take on this fight, but I do think Buckley's the side. I like a few dogs this week, but Fialho isn't one. I think people need to be careful because they're probably going to get burnt if they bet somebody by KO in this fight, like they did Walker and Smith last week. I think Buckley decision plus 300 is a good look. I like the change in weight class for him. And I think he's going to be smart and adding takedowns in this fight, which is ironic because Fialho in his interview was saying that Buckley's dumb, he's got low IQ. So it's going to be ironic when he shows good IQ and takes him down and holds him down for a decision. So yeah, Buckley decision plus 300 would be my bet.
Absolutely. And to your point, man, Bled Creation says, evening, guys. Thanks for the Johnny Walker decision pick last week. Ended up spooking myself, and by the end of it, put a small amount on Anthony Smith by sub. But overall, I just felt like plus 800, plus 850, for a guy who had been fighting to decision in a few of his recent bouts, just an insane number in a pick'em fight. So theoretically, that was always the side as well. Next up, we've got a great fight. And Rich, most of the time I lead off our predictions here, but you've been fired up about this one. You've been vocal on Twitter. The people have assembled. We got 100 people watching live, and I hope that all 100 have dropped a like already at this point, because we're on the main card. We're on to the great fights, and we're on to Rich's premier breakdown of the day. Rich, who's the max bet on and why?
Yeah, I like the Ducati side. I expected to be alone this week on her. But everyone seems to be coming out the woodwork and liking Ducati with me. It's probably because of my post. I think that she's live for the ITD as well. I just don't like things that I'm hearing from Loopy in her interview. I checked her Instagram out. I watched her interview with James Lynch. I watched the one with MMA Junkie that was released yesterday or today, whenever it was. And just major red flags, man. She's taking this on short notice. It's a 35-day turnaround from her last fight. She's been vacationing since her last fight. Like when she got the call 2 weeks ago, she was on vacation, man, sipping cocktails. In her interview yesterday, she lied, man. She said she was doing strength and conditioning and got the phone call. She's full of shit. She's just trying to put a front on. She wasn't. Go check her Instagram, man. She was out vacationing. I think she's just taking this for some quick money. She's asked for a catch weight at 120. Last time she had a short notice fight was against Luana Karolina, which she lost. I think her wrestling's overrated when you've got someone on the other side like Ducati, whose base was wrestling. She's an accomplished wrestler herself, Ducati. People who knew her before the UFC. Go check out the tape in her Bellator fights against McFarlane. She did lose them fights, but my point is there's no shame in that. They were 5-round fights. She held her own. She had top position. She took McFarlane down many times in those fights. She's got power in her hands. She was lighting up Zappaleta. She cut her. That fight was TKO. Taylor, she KO'd. Yeah, I love it, man. I think it's major recency bias as well on the Ducati side. Obviously, they see her last performance with Hill, where I can't lie, she didn't look good. She got her ass beat by Hill, but there's no shame in that, man. Hill's an excellent stand-up fighter. So there's no shame in that. And who else lost to Hill? Lupe Godinez. What was the price? I think plus 250 or something on the Hill side in that fight. So yeah, and I also think Lupe's got mental problems, man. She's one of these mental midgets who break in there. If they're not the hammer and they end up being the nail in a fight, I think they break, just as she did in the Angela Hill fight. She couldn't have her way. She couldn't implement her wrestling. So she just broke in there, man. And the difference, I think, between this fight and the Angela Hill one is Angela Hill hasn't got power. She's more of like an accumulation of strikes before she gets people out of there. Ducati, man, she's got one touch power and she's got excellent submissions. I don't know if people have seen the Angela Hill video with MMA Junkie. She's been training with Ducati in San Francisco along with Penne. She was saying that thank you for the wrestling, Ducati. She had her in an armbar many times. Because people just don't know how good Ducati is, man, because they haven't seen it. All the casuals have seen her last 2 fights with Penne and Hill, and they're forming their opinions based on that. But if you know her from pre-UFC days, you know what she's about, and she's absolutely going to fuck the shit out of Lupe, man, and I can't wait. I've got 9 units on it. I bet the ITD, and I bet the submission at 1,300. After one of 2 things are going to happen. Lupe's got a choice. She can try and wrestle and gas herself out because this is on short notice, or she can stand at distance and she can get lit up on the feet and get her calf kicked. One of 2 things are going to happen. So yeah, I'm all in on Ducati, man.
I appreciate where your head's at here. I mean, I think that Lupe has some things going for her overall. I think that will keep her around the UFC for a long time. She's got dual nationality. She represents Mexico. She represents Canada. She's trained with the Canadian women's national wrestling team. Her sisters are in the whatever you would call it, the feeder system for Canadians women's wrestling. However, like you mentioned, the problem in women's MMA and the reason why that would be a big deal against most fighters is that they don't have wrestling backgrounds. And, Emily Ducati has a wrestling background. She comes from a wrestling background. So for me, that's what's the interesting standout point here. I feel like Ducati is going to be able to keep this upright if she wants or compete for top position. Also, to your point, we've seen in the past she struggled a little bit with, maybe better grapplers, more physical fighters, and she's really made a lot of improvements to her game over time. You see Ducati go from a pretty average fighter to a very good fighter over time with good stand-up, good wrestling, good jiu-jitsu, very balanced game as well. So I think she can compete everywhere in this fight. I think she just will lose to specialists that are a little bit better than her. That's what happened her last fight. So I think Ducati is probably the side here. And, she also was a little bit in that same trap, getting right back in there, trying to stay active. And I think she's got a little bit more preparation for this fight. She was supposed to fight Polyana Viana, a grappling specialist. So I feel like she'd been working her grappling in the lead up to this fight. I think that's a great point by Rich. I think this is a great fight. And I do like the under potential here, the fight not to go to decision potential here for the Ducati side. So great fight. Should be a fun one. And looking forward to seeing how it plays out. I know my guy Rich is going to be watching that one with close attention.
It makes me laugh, bro. Like this week, you could give 5 to 8 reasons why Ducati can win this. You've got tangibles, you've got all these external factors that you can mention, and people don't want to know. They want to go and look at fucking Edmen versus Fluffy and, take a punt on Edmen because he's at a plus number. It just baffles me how, people's minds work in MMA Twitter, man. Anyway,
everybody's got a different approach, right? But, if it's not winning you money, then maybe consider tweaking it. But next up, we've got Edmen Shahbazyan taking on Anthony Fluffy Hernandez. One of my favorite calls ever in the UFC is when Anthony Hernandez submitted Rodolfo Vieira. John Anik is absolutely losing his mind. It was a great moment. But, when you watch that fight, that was kind of Rodolfo falling apart. He admitted before the fight, I'm very scared when I go out there. I get nervous. He got extremely nervous. We've seen him become a much more poised and patient fighter and somebody that can respond better to adversity over time in his fights. However, right, we still seen Rodolfo be a little bit suspect on the feet. He took a lot of clean shots in that fight early. He was taking a lot of knees to the body, and we could tell that he doesn't like facing that kind of adversity, especially damage. And so he got beat up in that fight really bad and ended up getting submitted. That's clearly the best win of Hernandez's career, but he hasn't reproduced that same kind of impressive results, I felt like, in the last two. Was it good to go out there and get the wins and do, everything right and basically dominate? Yes. But I felt like, he wasn't the same kind of dynamic finisher that he had been in some of his earlier fights. The problem for him has always been his own durability and his own ability to take strikes. When he gets into these extended striking fights, he's constantly getting hurt. He's getting hurt to the body. He's getting hurt upstairs. I saw the Jin Young Park fight, and he outlasted Jin Young Park there, but he took a lot of big shots there. And there was a couple of times when if Jin Young Park had maybe stopped going for subs and just tried to knee him in the face, he could have taken him out of there. So I feel like this is a volatile fight. I don't have the strongest opinion here. I understand why the money came in to tighten this up a little bit on Shahbazyan. It was over 2.5 to 1, but the ABCs do say always bet on cardio, which is definitely going to favor Hernandez here. However, the things that I don't love on the Hernandez side is the fact that, he seems very confident coming into this one, could potentially be sleeping on somebody like Edmen. And Edmen does fit the archetype of guys that have beaten him before. Guys that are really dangerous in the first round, that can strike, that can come out and be powerful and big. And it's not like Edmen normally gets punked in the wrestling in round one. It's that he normally gets punked in the wrestling down the stretch as he gets tired. Jack Hermanson was getting hit with the brick hips, and he was getting punched around, and he was getting bullied in that fight. The shame on Edmen there was that he wasn't able to take him out. So over the course of that fight, he got taken down and worn down. But he's training with a better camp. I do expect to see some improvements from him here. So it's a volatile fight, and for me, I've got no action on this one to this point. Rich, what about you?
Yeah, who was that guy he used to train with? Who was Ronda's ex-coach, man? I've been thinking of
Edmen Tarverdian.
That's the one. Yeah, I don't see why people are betting on this fight, man. Like, there's so many. I guess I can see if you're betting it just for the number if you got in early on Edmen. But in terms of how the fight's going, I don't think anyone's got a clue, man, because we don't know what Edmen's like. Edmen 2.0 since he left that camp and reinvented himself. Because the Doucher win told us nothing, because it's Doucher. Nothing happened in that fight. He offered nothing in return. So in my opinion, Edmen's still an unknown to us. Like how he's improved, how he's changed. So at the moment, Hernandez would be the side for me, because we know what he's about. He's improving his game. He's coming into his own. He's had more UFC fights as time's gone on. So to be honest, I think this is going to go to decision. I think it's probably going to be like a split. But yeah, I think Hernandez will probably get it done. I think people are going to get their fingers burnt betting on Edmen, man. But yeah, no real take from me. But if I had to pick, I'd say Hernandez and probably a split.
For me, this is a fight where I do feel like it's going to probably end inside the distance. So that would be where our disagreement is slightly here. And just because I feel like on the one hand, right, we don't know with Edmen, if he comes in with better cardio, it could change the dynamic. But if he fights to his best abilities, he's normally going to come out here and throw a bunch of kicks early, be very dynamic with his offense, throw a lot of heavies. And that will either take out somebody like Anthony Hernandez, where he's been caught in those situations before, or he might end up getting gassed out. And Fluffy does a great job pacing guys. And against guys with really good sub defense, maybe that's not going to work out. But I feel like here, Edmen, he showed good sub defense against Jack Hermanson, but that was a fight where Jack was kind of like hesitant to posture up, because he was like, if I get stuck underneath this kid, I'm going to die. And I felt like Hermanson kind of got spooked early. I don't expect that from Fluffy. He's been hurt in a lot of fights. He's never really just quit, unless he's like, I think at one time to a body shot, he just went down completely against Kevin Holland. But most of the time he's trying to work his way back up. He's trying to stay tough. So I just think later on in the fight, he'll be much fresher than Edmen if past his precedent. And he will be aggressively looking for the finish, because this is a big showcase for him as well. Co-main event opportunity. And, a lot of people are doubting him here. So I feel like it would be a good statement victory. He's gotten a couple wins. Like I said, they were good. They were thorough, but they weren't, highlight reels that are going to get you, on the next pay-per-view. And he wants to get that kind of win here. Edmen in the past has been a guy you could come up on, but he wants to change the narrative. He's still a very young guy, so I'm not writing him off yet either. I think both these guys have a lot of upside in the division for different reasons.
Have you seen Edmen's subline? It's 1,600, man. That's quite wide, isn't it?
I was thinking the same thing, because Adolfo Vieira had this guy in a lot of really sticky situations early, but he did show great submission defense and good reactions there. But again, Jun Young Park had him in some sticky situations. How many times do you get in those sticky situations and get back out and live to tell the tale? Yeah, Fremd as well. And I bet Fremd there. So I think that, this is the kind of guy who he fights on the edge. He does take a lot of risks. And that's why at minus 300, it's really dangerous stuff. But does he have a clear upside path? Yeah, of course. But again, it's just a volatile fight. It's at middleweight. These guys swang and bang. These guys hit hard. And Edmen, dude, he's fast. How did he knock out Brad Tavares? Brad Tavares never even saw the kick that knocked him out. It was already over. So Edmen, he's still got a lot to show, in my opinion. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a better product here. I do think 16-1 on a sub line, a little bit crazy. I felt like the Hernandez TKO line also made some sense. It's like 6-1. And we saw Edmen against Jack. He wasn't really giving his back. He was just covering up. If he gets tired and gets stuck underneath, Hernandez could just go do one of those Donkey Kong finishes and get the win. So it's something to think about as well. Next up, MacKenzie Dern taking on Angela Overkill Hill. Boy, oh boy, just about the hour mark, and we have got this card basically in the bag, guys. So main event here. Make sure you drop a like if you haven't already. Get subscribed. You know the deal. But this is a fight where, I honestly went in with one impression, and hearing the interviews and stuff, I wish I hadn't heard it, because it spooked me to my core, man. You know me, Rich. I really like to have some confidence when I'm going to put it on the line in these spots. And this main event has perplexed me, because on the one hand, MacKenzie Dern has done great in the small cage. But when you isolate for main events, she goes from 4-2 in the small cage to 0-2 in the small cage, right? She's got 2 Apex main events, 0-2 against Marina Rodriguez, and then against Yan Xiaonan. And the Yan Xiaonan, I give her a break. I bet Yan Xiaonan bigly there. Hate fading our girl MacKenzie Dern, but plus 200. The narrative all week, this is Mark Zuckerberg's favorite fighter. I was like, I don't give a shit. I was like, Yan Xiaonan is training at Team Alpha Male, and I thought she was making improvements. And we saw that in her last fight as well. So Yan Xiaonan, that's not a bad loss. That's not one we're going to hold against her. But the Marina Rodriguez loss is a little bit of an indictment of her effectiveness in MMA. And she kind of criticized herself. You listen to the interview, she said, like, I was too focused on chaining submission attacks and doing things that work in jiu-jitsu, forcing somebody from one position to the next, to the next, to the next. That's not what we're, what she wants to do here. She says, I want to just focus on one submission, go all out. And if it's not there, focus on getting position, winning rounds, and dominating, landing strikes. So I like that part of the interview. Then there's the part of the interview where MacKenzie Dern's like, I'm going through a sloppy divorce. I don't have a trainer. Perillo's been out for, 30 days, 60 days, whatever it is, with Rockhold doing BKFC stuff. So tons and tons of problems. Jay says, I partied with Dern in Las Vegas. She ain't focused. Shout out, Jay. I don't know if that's true, but I like to believe it's true. So that's why we put it on the show. Please don't sue me for defamation. God bless you. But I think that as far as I'm concerned here, MacKenzie is a very dangerous ground player, for anybody. She could beat anybody on the ground at any time. Even girls that survived, like Tisha Torres. I mean, what was she able to do? Resist. That's it. All she could do was defend, basically, because she was in such a vulnerable position. So MacKenzie has real skills to win the fight. But what did we talk about with Kron Gracie, in the lead up to that fight? Just, we haven't seen what his training situation's like. It's changed since the last time he was here, and that could create problems, right? In addition, Angela Hill, I feel like we've seen true improvements from her over time. I used to think that Angela Hill was just a complete fish on the mat. And I think she was for a while in her career. But I do think she's made some serious improvements. The one thing I hated, and I hated something from each girl's interview, Angela Hill said, I'm not afraid to go to the ground in this one, which is the worst thing you ever want to hear before somebody's going to fight a jiu-jitsu savant. But I will also say this. Angela Hill has shown a lot more composure in her recent fights. Panic is what gets people submitted most often in the UFC, especially when they're fresh. It's panic. It's fear of the sub. It's fear of the person hurting you, and you make bad decisions. You're embarrassed, you're panicking, and you make bad decisions. I think that for Angela Hill, if she's able to stay calm and composed here and not get submitted, it becomes a tricky fight. I think if MacKenzie's true to her word and does what she says she's going to do, then she's going to be very live to win this fight by TKO because her positional movement on the ground is just above Angela Hill. Angela Hill could train from now till the day she dies. She can't catch up to MacKenzie, who's been doing it her whole life. So that is the difference in this fight. On the exchanges on the ground, it's going to be levels different. Even though Angela's worked really hard, even though she trains with the good girls, I do think the levels will be there. But people playing a shutdown game, man, it's a lot harder to submit somebody when all they want to do is not get subbed. But if you're punching them hard in the face, you could win. So that's the difference. But as far as I'm concerned, this is an interesting fight as well because most girls haven't been able to punish MacKenzie Dern for her, chin being up in the air, for her being susceptible to just walk onto strikes, for her not having very comprehensive defense. Her boxing coach has not been here for the last 2 months. So what has she been working on? She says, I'm working on tactics. I'm working on throwing more strikes. I'm working on winning rounds. Okay. She has not won decisions at a very high clip. She's not been winning 5 rounds. She's been finishing. So then she also says, I'm going to finish within 3 rounds. I don't know what the hell to make of it. I don't know what the hell MacKenzie Dern is saying here. Her speech is all over the place. So I don't know what to make of this fight. I think that if it stays on the feet, both girls have a chance to win. Angela Hill does tire a little bit as fights go on. She does take herself down. I've mentioned this many times. Go back and watch the Ashley Yoder fight. Ashley Yoder can't take her down when she wants to, but every time Angela Hill decides it's time to clinch like she wants to do, she just gets taken down in ridiculous haphazard fashion. I do think Jewish Better makes a good point here. Dern by KO is 20-1. I think that's too long. I think that's wide odds. However, I also think on the other side, fight ends by KO at plus 700 is a little bit wide. Angela Hill by KO is like plus 850 or so. So basically they're saying MacKenzie Dern has no chance to win by knockout with those odds, which I think is wrong. And then I also think that they're saying Angela Hill doesn't really have a chance to win this by knockout which is wrong because MacKenzie Dern gets hit very cleanly every fight. She may not be prepared for this fight. It's 5 rounds. That's a long time to be out there when you don't want to be there. Angela Hill, she's not going to let you off the hook by not throwing shit at your head, face, neck, and chest. So if MacKenzie Dern's not ready for this fight, doesn't want to be there and can't get takedowns, she's going to get embarrassed like Cron Gracie did and just end up sitting on the ground and looking foolish and potentially getting stopped. So MacKenzie has always been very tough, but she's been dropped in the first round before too. And let's not forget that. So she can drop people. She throws big overhands. She's aggressive. She's not afraid to get in a fight. And that could be her blessing or her downfall here. So I don't think that MacKenzie Dern is going to knock her out with a punch on the feet, WW, to be clear. But I do think that she could get a position where the referee has to stop the fight because Angela Hill doesn't know how to get out of the crucifix when it's MacKenzie Dern on top or on the back, by the way. That's another way she could finish this fight. Like freaking, what's his name, way back in the day. Oh, God, I can't believe I'm blanking on his name. Oh my God, I'll figure it out later and I'll post it. The video is so savage. The guy's on the back with the crucifix just throwing elbows at a clearly unconscious man. Referees a little bit less reactive back in the day at one of the original UFCs. But overall, guys, I think this is a violent fight. You know, I'm surprised to see the plus money on the fight to go to decision here. I'm a little bit surprised by the narratives from everybody that this is going to go to decision. I just think both of these ladies need a finish to kind of propel their career forward. I think they're both going to be looking for it. I don't know how prepared they are for 5 rounds. It was supposed to be a 3-round fight a week ago. So overall, just a lot of question marks for me on how prepared they're going to be to go 5 rounds. And I think both of them have a path to finish. What do you think?
Yeah, there's a few question marks from me too, man. I do like fight doesn't go the distance at plus money. I think that's good because if MacKenzie hasn't been training, which I don't think she has per Instagram, or from what she's saying in the interview about Perillo not being in town or whatever with Luke Rockhold and bare knuckle. If she hasn't been training and she's just showing up here for 5 rounds against Angela, who seems highly motivated, she could get TKO'd, you know, round 3, 4, 5 because her striking isn't there, man. And Angela smokes her on the feet, in my opinion. I originally thought that this going to 5 rounds from 3 and being moved to the Apex would favor Dern. But then all these big question marks come in about has she been training, you know, the outside noise about getting divorced, that's got to fuck with your head. So I'm staying away from it. I hope to God Angela wins because out of the 2 interviews I've seen today, I loved everything about Angela. You know, she's cool. She was talking a good game, talking about her training. And I just like her more as a person. So, yeah, I think I'd like Hill to get this done, but it could be either or, man. I think Dern could get her sub. I think Angela is very prone to subs still. But yeah, the later the fight goes on, it obviously favors Hill, and I could see a TKO. So I love violence in this fight, man.
Dude, we are just in sync this week. I love to see it. You know, because I completely agree, man. Amanda Hebos set MacKenzie Dern's world on fire on the feet. Just jabbed her into oblivion, right? And just shut her down completely on the ground. It is easier to go back. If you guys don't believe me, go back and watch the Shab shutdown. All right. It's the most widely criticized grappling performance of all time. But what did he do? He proved that you can go out there against really good fighters, really good jiu-jitsu players, world class, and run away and not get grabbed onto. That's what you could do. So Angela Hill, she's fleet of foot. She's difficult to get a beat on. I feel like MacKenzie Dern, they constantly try and set her up for success, but they're not giving her give-me's. They're giving her developmental fights. And I feel like this, unfortunately, might be one that she took at the wrong place at the wrong time against somebody who's got the wrong record on paper and looks really bad, but is in the best place of her career by far. I feel like Angela Hill maybe discovered supplements late in life. God bless her for it if she did. I feel like she's looking more physical, more impressive coming in. She's doing WEC method. She's doing all this stuff. By the way, world-class, best wrestlers in the world doing the exact same thing that Angela Hill's doing in terms of preparation, okay? I'm talking about Jordan Burroughs. I'm talking about Kyle Dake, WEC method. That's what they do. So just keep that in the back of your head in terms of the level of preparation. One girl is going all in and doing more and more and more and better and better and better, more jiu-jitsu, more grappling, more judo, more striking. And she's been around the game for a very long time. She's fought a lot of the best girls in the division. And by the way, how many of them punked her? Not many. Amanda Lemos dropped her in the first round. She's about to fight for the title. She may not even have won that fight with a knockdown recorded. It's like for me, I just feel like Angela Hill, she's been on the wrong end of a lot of decisions. Wouldn't it be something too if they got it right for once and gave her a decision when she gets that main event shine? She's had one previous main event and a million fights in the UFC. So I just think this is a really competitive fight. I think both ladies live to finish. But don't be surprised if this hits the cards and they give it to Angela Hill for once, a little bit of get back. Sorry for all the times we did you wrong, because MacKenzie Dern is young, guys. And Angela Hill, if anything's going to happen in her career at the title level, at the top of the division, anything like that, it's now, right now, and not a day later. But for MacKenzie Dern, if she loses this fight, it can be rebuilt. The biggest red flag for me on the MacKenzie Dern side, she said, I want a plan for if I win this fight and a plan for if I lose this fight. That's what she said, and I quote at the press conference. Dude, I don't want to hear that. I want you to say there is no losing this fight. There's nothing but this fight. I'm all in on this fight. And she said the opposite. She's like, I don't want this fight. She's like, I don't want to think about it as just one fight. I want to plan for my career. And so I do worry a little bit that she's planning for the worst. She's like, yeah, I'm not ready for this fight. I've lost 2 of these main events already. She talked about, I'm dealing with trauma being back at the Apex. Jay, my man, you're actually hitting the nail on the head, dude. I thought she said all the wrong things. She said some of the right things about, I'm going to be more aggressive with the strikes. I'm going to try and win rounds. All that's what you want to hear. But then it was disjointed. It didn't all coalesce. It didn't all sound coherent at the end. So for me, I'm a little bit worried about MacKenzie's state of mind coming into this fight. And when you're talking about laying chalk, that's not where you want to be. I want to be fully confident with you. A lot of these fighters are delusional with their level of confidence. Not MacKenzie Dern right now. She's being very realistic about her chances. I hate to hear that stuff. So she's giving a lot of credit to Angela as well, talking about how skilled she is, how experienced she is, showing a lot of deference. Angela Hill, don't forget, she was an original cast member on Tough. She's been around the UFC promotional machine for a very long time. ESPN's done independent features on her Black Lives Matter and all the, a lot of stuff for Angela Hill. Promotionally, she's a commentator. She does a lot of stuff. She does the Two Straws podcast as well, I think, on UFC Fight Pass. So just a lot of things to keep in mind here. I think they like Angela Hill, and I think that they prefer, either one of these ladies gets a shining win inside the distance. So I like Fight Doesn't Go along with my guy, Rich. And there you have it. We've got the UFC card in the books. Rich, why don't you let the people know where they can find more from you, brother?
Yeah, get me on Twitter, man. If you like my bets, sign up to the Patreon, $12 a month. All good. Got some big bets this week. And Ducati season, man. Comeback season.
Love it. And guys, you can find my information as well in this description box below. You can also find information about Rich. You can find the Lab VIP where I send tons of information, hundreds of UFC fighter profiles that are ready-made already. And a lot of information on the fighters on this card, hundreds of pages worth of documents, fight tape, A-sides, everything you could possibly imagine. So that's all in the description below. My Bet MMA track third party up over 6.8 units on the year at a 13% ROI. So excited to keep the ball rolling. Let's get another good week going this week, and excited about the card, man. So fired up, 7 bets already in the tracker, ready to roll, and more to be added. So God bless you all. Enjoy those fights. Until next time, everybody, make sure you get subscribed. Make sure you drop a like on the video, and we'll see you next week, and we'll do it all again. Take care, everybody.